The Oilers and Flames have both spent time in the spotlight, although one team more than the other. But regardless of wins or losses, neither team shied away from the battle, with over 260 fights occurring between the rivals. In this video, I'm looking back at the history of the Battle of Alberta, which has been played 305 times at the NHL level when you combine the regular season and playoffs. But if you rewind the Battle of Alberta to the beginning, you wind up in Edmonton in 1895, when Calgary's Fire Brigade hockey team traveled north to take on a team of Northwest Mounted Police. The Fire Brigade defeated the Mounties 1-0, and prepared for a game against the Edmonton Thistles Amateur Hockey Club the next night. They also took down the Thistles, and returned to southern Alberta as the winners of the first unofficial Battle of Alberta. According to contemporaneous sources, those first Battle of Alberta games were nicely played, with no rough stuff on either side. But that all changed 3 years later, when the Battle of Alberta we know and love today was first ignited, in what may stand as the most violent game in the rivalry's history. The battle took place at Calgary's Victoria Arena in February of 1898, where South Edmonton's Shamrocks fought a bitter and close contest against the Calgary Fire Brigade. The injury tally included a broken nose, a broken arm, and an assortment of other bruises and wounds, in a game the paper described as violent and sloppy. But the incident that defined the game took place in the first half, when Calgary captain Everett Marshall took a stick to the face. According to the papers, Marshall went in for a hit right as a Shamrocks player shot the puck. His stick caught Marshall in the left eye and caused him to stagger. Calgary's star player was rushed to the General Hospital in nearby Victoria Park, where it was determined the eye was damaged beyond repair, and the doctors were forced to remove it. The incident triggered debates about whether hockey should be banned. But of course it wasn't, and the Everett Marshall incident turned out to be just the first of many bloody battles of Alberta. After a couple decades of informal rivalries, the founding of the Western Canadian Hockey League brought the first sense of legitimacy to the battle in 1921. The Calgary Tigers and Edmonton Eskimos each claimed one championship during the league's 5-year run. Unfortunately, the league folded, and it would be almost 50 years until pro hockey returned to Alberta when the World Hockey Association arrived on the scene. Calgary had a bit of bad luck, first with the Broncos, who folded without playing a game, and then with the Cowboys, who only lasted from 1975 to 1977. Things went a lot better up in Edmonton, whose fans fell in love with the Oilers right from the start. The Oilers were one of the more successful franchises, but the league folded in 1979, and the Oilers joined the NHL. A year later, the NHL's Atlanta Flames, who were suffering from low attendance and lousy play on the ice, moved to Calgary. Both Alberta teams were nearly unstoppable during the 80s, with the rivalry flourishing from 1983 to 1990, during which one Alberta team made it to the Cup finals for 8 straight seasons. During this stretch, the Alberta teams won 6 of 8 Cups, with the Oilers winning 5. As a result, the 1983 to 1990 Oilers are considered one of the greatest dynasties of all time. And after 3 rounds of head-to-head voting, the 1984 to 85 Oilers were named the greatest team in NHL history. Unfortunately for the Flames, the Oilers' dominance often came at their expense, and despite winning 2 President's trophies and 3 division titles, the Flames lost 3 of 4 playoff series against the Oilers and claimed just 1 Stanley Cup. The first time the teams met in the playoffs was the 1983 Campbell Conference Division Finals, back when the Flames were still playing at the 7,500-seat Stampede Corral. The Oilers opened the series with a 6-3 win at the Northlands Coliseum, led by a 4-goal performance from Mark Messier. The Flames' Paul Reinhart also recorded a hat trick, and Jim Paplinski and Don Jackson got into a fight. The Oilers also ran away with Game 2, with 5 different goal scorers leading them to a 5-1 victory. Paplinski and Jackson got into another fight, and Doug Risebrough and Glenn Anderson fought late in the 3rd period. Heading back to Calgary down 2-0, Flames fans were hoping for a big response, but Game 3 was a disaster from start to finish. Wayne Gretzky erupted to score 4 goals, and Messier recorded a hat trick, as the Oilers destroyed the Flames by a score of 10-2. The first period was a bloodbath, with the teams racking up 98 minutes in penalties, including 4 majors for fighting. Game 4 was a back-and-forth affair, with Lanny McDonald willing the Flames to victory with a Gordie Howe hattie in a game that featured another brawl. That sent the series back to Edmonton, where the Oilers closed it out with a 9-1 drubbing. The Oilers ended up reaching the finals, where they were swept by the Islanders. The teams met again in the following year's division finals, this time in a much closer battle. The Flames opened the scoring in Game 1, but the Oilers roared back with 5 goals to take a 1-0 lead in the series. Game 2 was a back-and-forth overtime thriller, with Kerry Wilson scoring early in overtime for the Flames to tie the series at 1. The teams traveled south to the brand new Olympic Saddledome for Game 3, where the Oilers eked out a 3-2 victory on the strength of 2 goals by Paul Coffey in a game that featured 6 majors for fighting. The Oilers also took Game 4, this time by a score of 5-3, and like the previous year, were heading home with a chance to eliminate the Flames in 5. But this time the Flames were ready to fight back, winning Game 5 by a score of 5-4 to force a Game 6 back in Calgary. Game 6 was another back-and-forth overtime thriller, with Lanny McDonald scoring the overtime winner to force a Game 7 up the road in Edmonton. Thanks to 2 goals from Yari Curry and 3 points from Gretzky, the Oilers took Game 7 by a score of 7-4 and eliminated the Flames for the second straight postseason. The Oilers returned to the finals once again, but this time got over the hump and brought home the Stanley Cup with a 4-1 series victory. They repeated as Stanley Cup champions in 1985 without having to get past the Flames. But after a year off, the teams met again in 1986, with the Oilers favored to win their 3rd straight cup. The Flames jumped out to a 1-0 series lead, with a 4-1 victory on the strength of a 30-save performance by Mike Vernon in a game that featured 97 minutes and penalties. Game 2 was a seesaw battle that featured a fight between Tim Hunter and Don Jackson, and saw the teams tied at 5 after regulation. The Oilers tied the series thanks to Glenn Anderson's overtime winner, just 1 minute into the extra frame. Back home in Calgary for Game 3, the Flames took a 2-1 series lead, thanks to Joel Otto's game-winning goal. Game 4 was a high-octane battle, featuring a 5-point night from Gretzky and 204 minutes in penalties, as the Oilers tied the series with a 7-4 win. Back in Edmonton for Game 5, Lanny McDonald scored the game-winning goal in a 4-1 Flames victory, sending the series back to Calgary, with the Flames 1 win away from eliminating the Oilers for the first time in franchise history. But the Oilers weren't going down without a fight, and after Calgary jumped out to a 2-0 lead, the Oilers scored 5 unanswered goals to force a Game 7 back in Edmonton. The Flames jumped out to another 2-0 lead in Game 7, but the Oilers responded, and the game was tied heading into the final frame. The series-winning goal came 5 minutes into the 3rd, when the Oilers' Steve Smith attempted a pass from the side of his own net, and the puck deflected off Grant Fuhr's leg and into the back of the net. The goal remains one of the most iconic mishaps in NHL history, and gave the Flames their first series win over the Oilers. The Flames ended up making it to the finals, where they fell in 5 games to the Habs, who were led by rookie sensation Patrick Roy. It was the Oilers' turn to make the finals the next season, where they defeated the Flyers in 7 games to take home their 3rd Stanley Cup in 4 years. After taking a break in 1987, the playoff edition of the Battle of Alberta returned in 1988. Even though the Flames had won the President's Trophy, the Oilers dominated the series from start to finish, outscoring the Flames 18-11 in a 4-game sweep. The highlight of the series came in Game 2, where Gretzky scored one of the most iconic goals of his career when he blasted a slap shot past Mike Vernon to win the game in overtime. After defeating the Flames, the Oilers cruised to their 4th Stanley Cup, losing just 2 games through all 4 rounds of the playoffs. In 1989, it was finally time for Flames fans to feel the glory of winning the Stanley Cup. They didn't have to face the Oilers, but they still had to deal with Gretzky, who'd been traded to the Kings in the offseason. The Flames swept Gretzky's Kings and ultimately defeated the Habs in 6 games in the finals, becoming the only visiting team to win the Cup at the Forum in what remains the last All-Canadian Stanley Cup finals. It was the Oilers' turn to win the Cup again in 1990, where they got past the Jets in a grueling opening round series, and ultimately defeated the Bruins in 5 games in the finals. Which brings us to 1991, the last time the Flames and Oilers would meet in the playoffs for 31 years. The battle was tightly contested, with each team's star players making big contributions. The Flames had home ice advantage by virtue of finishing 20 points ahead of the Oilers during the regular season. But the Oilers struck first, winning Game 1 by a score of 3-1, thanks to 3 unanswered goals. The Flames bounced back with a 3-1 victory of their own in Game 2, thanks to Doug Gilmour's game-winning goal, to send the series up to Edmonton tied at a game apiece. Game 3 was up for grabs, with the Flames leading until the midway point of the 3rd period. But the Oilers used their quick strike offense to tie the game on a goal by Glenn Anderson, and won it with just 14 seconds remaining thanks to Joe Murphy. Trailing 2 games to 1, the Flames jumped out to a 2-0 lead in Game 4, but the Oilers came roaring back, scoring 5 straight goals to take a commanding 3-1 series lead. Back home and on the ropes, the Flames blew another 2-0 lead, but this time they were able to right the ship, taking the game 5-3, thanks to a 2-goal night from Kerry Wilson and a late empty netter from Joe Nieuwendyk. Facing elimination again in Game 6, Theo Fleury orchestrated one of the most iconic moments in Flames history when he scored the overtime winner and celebrated by sliding down the ice like a madman. That set up a decisive Game 7 back in Calgary to decide the winner of the 5th edition of the playoff Battle of Alberta. The Flames jumped out to a 3-0 lead, and it looked like they might run away with the game. But the Oilers came roaring back and scored 4 unanswered goals to take the lead. Ronnie Stern tied it up late in the third, and the teams headed to overtime for the second straight game. Esa Tikkanen scored 7 minutes into overtime, and the Oilers won the playoff Battle of Alberta for the 4th time. After the 1991 playoffs, the nature of the rivalry started to change. The regular season schedule was revised, and the teams no longer played each other 8 times a year. Changes in the playoff format also reduced the opportunities for the two teams to meet in the playoffs. And as the NHL expanded in the States, the Flames and Oilers both faced financial difficulties, as they were among the smallest markets in the league, which restricted their ability to afford elite talent. This made Battle of Alberta games less meaningful, as the teams had less to play for. The Flames experienced their greatest success of the era in 2003 to 2004, when they made a Cinderella run to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. The next season, which followed the 2004 to 2005 lockout, the Oilers made a Cinderella run of their own, falling to the Hurricanes in Game 7 of the finals. Unfortunately, both teams' successes were a one-off, as the Oilers missed the playoffs every season for the next decade, and the Flames missed the postseason for 6 straight years following the 2009 playoffs. Despite these tough years, the Battle of Alberta still produced some memorable moments, like when Craig McTavish ripped out Harvey the Houndstun, and when Jordan Eberle scored one of the nicest first career goals of all time. This era also saw the first ever trade between the teams, when the Oilers sent Steve Staios to the Flames in exchange for Aaron Johnson in March of 2010. The battle saw a resurgence in the mid-2010s, thanks to the arrivals of star players like Connor McDavid for the Oilers and Johnny Hockey for the Flames. With the intensity ramped up, hockey fans were stoked when the playoff edition of the battle finally returned, in the second round of the 2022 postseason. The matchup had considerable build-up, and for good reason, as the regular season matchup had featured high-event hockey, with each team winning 2 games. Game 1 exceeded expectations, with the teams combining for 15 goals, the most ever in a Battle of Alberta playoff game. The Flames jumped out to a 3-0 lead, just over 6 minutes into the first period, before McDavid pulled the Oilers to within 2 a minute and a half later. With the Flames leading 3-1 heading into the second period, Blake Coleman scored back-to-back goals to give his team a commanding 5-1 lead. But the scoring was far from done, as Evan Bouchard got one back for the Oilers, before the Flames quickly restored their 4-goal lead. It looked like the Flames were going to cruise to victory, until Zach Hyman scored back-to-back goals, and Leon Draisaitl added a late tally to pull the Oilers to within 1, heading into the third period. The Oilers stunned the Saddledome by tying the game a minute and a half into the third, but Rasmus Andersson restored the lead for the home side just over a minute later. The Flames added an insurance marker midway through the third, and closed out the game with an empty netter. The home team jumped out to another quick lead in Game 2, thanks to early goals from Michael Stone and Brett Ritchie. Duncan Keith answered back for the Oilers, and the teams entered the intermission with the Flames leading 2-1. The Oilers took a too-many-men penalty early in the second, and the Flames scored a power play goal to take a 3-1 lead. But McDavid struck back just over a minute later, and Evan Bouchard scored late in the second, to tie things up heading into the third. Zach Hyman silenced the Saddledome with a shorthanded goal midway through the third, and Draisaitl sealed the deal for the Oilers a little over 2 minutes later, and the teams headed up north tied at a game apiece. After a scoreless first period, the Oilers cruised to a 4-1 victory on the strength of a natural hat trick from Evander Kane. In danger of falling behind 3-1, the Flames' start in Game 4 was disastrous, with Jacob Markstrom gifting the Oilers a goal just 21 seconds into the game. The Oilers added 2 more first-period goals, and headed into the second period up 3-0. But the Flames slowly chipped away at the lead, thanks to second-period goals from Lindholm and Backlund. Trailing 3-2 a little over halfway through the third, Rasmus Andersson beat Mike Smith with a slap shot from his own end. It looked like the goal might shift the momentum of the series, until the Oilers scored a little over 5 minutes later, before adding an empty netter to take the game 5-3. The series shifted back to Calgary, with the Flames on the brink of elimination. The home team jumped out to a 2-0 lead early in the second, but quickly found themselves behind, thanks to 3 unanswered goals from the Oilers. Johnny Hockey tied it up just 15 seconds later, and the Flames took the lead with another goal just 16 seconds after that. But the quick strike scoring wasn't done, as the Oilers tied the game just 40 seconds after the Flames took the lead. With the game still tied late in the third period, it appeared that Blake Coleman had scored the go-ahead goal. But upon further review, officials determined he kicked the puck into the net with a distinct kicking motion. The controversial call kept the game tied, and the teams headed to overtime. Connor McDavid scored 5 minutes into the extra frame, and the Oilers won the playoff Battle of Alberta for the 5th time. The Oilers went on to face the Avs, who swept them in 4 straight, and went on to win the Stanley Cup. The 2022 run was just the start for the Oilers, who have lost to the defending Stanley Cup champions for 3 straight years, including Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals against the Panthers. Unfortunately for the Flames, their fortunes went in the other direction, as their 2 biggest stars left in the 2022 offseason, and key pieces like Lindholm, Hanifin, and Markstrom were traded the following year. The Flames have missed the playoffs for 2 consecutive seasons, which has put any chance of another playoff Battle of Alberta on hold. But things seem to be looking up for the Flames, led by the outstanding play of rookie goalie Dustin Wolf. The Oilers have clearly had the upper hand in the Battle of Alberta in recent years, and will likely continue to do so as long as they have McDavid and Draisaitl. Over the entire history of the battle, the Oilers have had far more playoff success, as they've won 4 of 5 series, while going 23-12. But despite the Oilers' playoff dominance, the Flames actually have a slightly better overall record, leading the battle with 145 wins, 134 losses, 6 overtime losses, and 19 ties. Let me know your favorite Battle of Alberta moment in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to support the channel.